All right, thank you everybody for joining us on this video. I am Rachael Woody. I'm the consulting archivist on this project, and I'm here with John Goodenberger, the city historian for the city of Astoria. And John and I have been working on a project with the Astoria Public Library, and this particular project has been funded thanks to the Oregon Cultural Trust. So thank you, Oregon Cultural Trust, for allowing us to do such important and yet such enjoyable work with these historical collections. So with that, I'm going to let John introduce us to the next collection that we are going to feature today.
Great. Well, welcome back to the Vortex. And today we're going to be looking at a couple of boxes. And these boxes are a part of the Polly McKean Bell collection. And Polly McKean Bell was super active in history in our area. She goes back, her father came here as a child in about 1848. And her father was Samuel T. McKean Jr. And her mother her name was Mary Jane Smith, and she was one of those so-called Mercer girls. So Asa Mercer brought a bunch of young eligible women to the West to marry eligible bachelors. And Samuel McKean and Mary got together and married and had a number of children. And so the boxes we're going through today are from that personal family, and there's some very personal things in these boxes. That's the quick and the dirty. So for instance, when I talk about personal things, we have a whole collection of Victorian cards. And look how beautifully cut they are. I mean, this is prior to laser cutting going on. And so we have a collection of primarily Christmas cards that are from the Victorian era. Beautifully done. Then what we have are scrapbooks. And one of the scrapbooks that we have is by Eliza Hustler. Eliza Hustler would be Polly's aunt. So Eliza Hustler married Captain Hustler, one of the early bar pilots in the area. And they married, she was a young woman, like maybe 16 years old or so when they married. And this marriage, it was announced even in the New York papers. And I realized there weren't a lot of people in town at the time, but I loved the fact that everybody sat down to dinner in Astoria to celebrate this wedding in the early 1850s. Well, Eliza became the grand dame of the steamboat women. She was 100 years old by the time she died. So she died in the 1930s. And anybody who was anyone wanted to see their picture taken next to her. And so we have this scrapbook of steamboatmen history and them getting their pictures taken next to her and all. And it's a fragile scrapbook. But it has all these different newspaper clippings, plus it has a couple of photos of Eliza in it, and again celebrating her 100th birthday and all. And she was quite the woman. Here's somebody did a little cutout of her as well. So she was a really cool lady in this town. So we have a scrapbook of things that were important to her. Other things that we have a scrapbook of in here are Polly's sisters. So one of her sisters married a Frank Gunn, a local man, and the other sister married A.S.T., who is a city engineer. And those of you who wander around Astoria and see the so-called pigeon stairs, those little tiny slat stairs that block the street ends, AST designed those. So that would have been Polly's brother-in-law. So we have documents from both the Gunns and the T's here. Then we have personal friends of theirs in this file. And one of their personal friends was Rolf Klepp. And many of you know Rolf Klepp as the founder of the Maritime Museum. but Rolf was also a commercial designer and a draftsman and an artist and all. And we have a number of his drawings here. But one thing you may remember from your history is that he did the initial drawing for the reconstruction of Fort Clatsop during the celebration in 1955. And Polly's son, Burnby Bell, were also involved in the construction there. Well, Rolf did this sketch, and this is a well-published sketch, but we actually have original drawings here, which is pretty rare, that we have on this yellow skinny paper, real Rolf Klepp sketches. And so that's pretty cool to see that. So that was a part of the sesquicentennial. And as an aside, we also they gave out souvenir cedar planks during the centennial. And these cedar planks have Fort Clatsop on it and all. And this one is special because it has signatures from so-called Lewis, Clark, and Sacagawea on it. And these were all the people that were playing them at the time during the sesquicentennial. So that's pretty cool. And keeping with that era, those of you who may be old timers here in Astoria may remember the Fur Trader. It was a bar, and it was at the base of the Astor Hotel. And in the 1950s, they took the base of the Astor Hotel and they put wooden palisades all around it to look like a fur trading fort. And then they had this bar inside, and lo and behold, we have their menu here. And it's just great 1950s graphics from that time. You can get your charbroiled steak, top sirloin steak, $3 for your steak. This is great art. You know, I love this. So this is some of the things within her personal box. Also, we have a flat file here, which are newspapers. And in these newspapers, this particular newspaper, when I came across it, I went white or whiter. How about that, since I never have had a tan? Look at this, the death of Abraham Lincoln. Do we actually have an original paper to the death of Abraham Lincoln? And the answer is no, we don't. This is a fake, and we have an old fake. It's from before the turn of the last century. People were printing out fakes of this paper and selling them as souvenirs, and we have a copy of one of those souvenirs. Something as a historian that I also really love is this. I have never seen this map before opening this box. And this is a map of Astoria from the 1870s. And on this map, you can see all the blocks, and they have written in who owns all those individual lots. Can you imagine the wonderful historic resource that is, just to be able to go block by block and see who owns Astoria? Now, you may not recognize it, but this section here with the dock going out in the middle of it, that's downtown Astoria. That's before the water was blocked from going into the downtown area. So this is what downtown looked like in the 1870s. And then I'll wrap this up by one more piece. I mentioned that Polly was really interested in local history and all. Can't reach it here, but we have a whole file that she was a part of the Daughters of American Revolution, and a file here on doing monuments in the area and helping out on historical sites. The last thing I want to mention is that her son, Burnby Bell, was, again, very, very significant in the Clatsop County Historical Society. The two of them, Polly and Burnby, were significant in saving the Flavel House from destruction. But Burnby, also one of his claims to fame, so to speak, was that he was responsible for returning the skull of Chief Comeonly that had been stolen and made its way all the way to England. And he was really prominent in getting that skull to come back to Clatsop County. And it has since been returned to the tribes. But he was really very prominent in that. So that's our collection here. A quick look. I hope that people are finding this of interest. We're going to come back in future videos and display some other boxes and tell you about some of the cool things that we're finding in those. So before we close, Rachel, do you have any questions for me?
Well, thank you so much for sharing about Polly McKean Bell's collection. And as an archivist and somebody interested in history, it's fascinating to me that Polly and essentially every member in her family, and including the people who married into the family, all played such pivotal roles in City of Astoria and its evolution. So it's just, you could tell it's just a dynamic family of movers and shakers.
Yeah.
Yes. As far as collections in general, and to give people a sense, since this is one of our first feature videos, Polly's collection is sort of representative of a few other local historian collections, and just that instinct to collect and preserve the character and the local history. And from my perspective as an archivist, to have several people from the Astoria area being inclined to help chronicle the history of the area is so impressive. And so I'm wondering, you as a historian, John, is that pretty typical with what you've found in other archive situations, or does this seem as unique as I have found it?
I can't necessarily speak for other communities, but I can say that as historians are super proud of the history. And we have a number of historians here that have left collections with either here within the basement of the library or in the Clatsop County Historical Society or to the Maritime Museum, Columbia River Maritime Museum. Again, the families here have really cherished the history and have done a really good job of documenting certainly the history from about the late 1840s forward.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, I know we did Russell Dark last week, and we have just wrapped up with Polly McKean Bell. Do you have a teaser for who we might be doing next?
Oh, why don't we do August Hildebrand next? That'll be fun.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you so much to everybody who has watched this video. And if you have questions for myself, John, or Jimmy Pearson, the library director and the project director, please feel free to contact us. The very next slide you'll see will have Jimmy's contact information on it. And if you're seeing this video on YouTube or on the Astoria Public Library Facebook page, please feel free to drop your comments there as well. And we are hoping to do a sort of a Q&A session to conclude the features that we're doing. And so with that, thank you so much, John. And if you would like to say the final goodbyes.
Well, I really appreciate the chance to do this. This is really important. And I thank the Trust for enabling us to do this important work. So we'll see you at the next video.